I'm a firm believer that we need to start gatekeeping certain words and their meanings because the speed at which people can change those meanings to suit their agenda is almost embarrassing. During the course of illit's debut era, they've suffered an immense amount of cyberbullying, mainly spearheaded by Door's own CEO, on the grounds of allegedly being copycats of her group newjeans. We know now, due to text messages released, that she never actually cared about that and that their debut was no more than just a ploy to push her agenda in ruining Hype's reputation in order to force a drop in their stocks. But despite those real intentions being brought to light, Minhyejin fans, and yes, I call them that because I don't even know if these people actually care about newjeans, have made use of their clearly not precious time by reaching to the stars and back for proof that illit is basically a ripoff of newjeans, and that somehow Hitman Bang was obsessed with copying the group's concept. Moreover, there are K-tubers on this platform co-signing this nonsense, not surprisingly, as research is literally something they've consistently proven to be immune to, so I've decided to take it upon myself to dismantle this obviously ridiculous argument, hopefully bringing a little bit of common sense to the table. I've divided this video into 3 parts. Part 1 will focus on the farce of copying allegations. Secondly, I'll address the lack of validity in Minhyejin's claim over her work being original, which it isn't. And then finally, the very obvious differences between illit and newjeans concepts that everyone is choosing to ignore in an attempt to gaslight us into believing that these groups are the same. I'd like to stress again that Minhyejin never actually cared about illit's concept in any shape or form. It is obvious that she saw the girl's debut as nothing more than an opportunity to start the drama that will steamroll her plan into action. If you're still convinced that this woman actually believes that illit copied her, then you cannot be helped. I'd also like to mention that I understand that there's a difference between casual listeners and hardcore newjeans fans, and that there's a possibility that they may see things differently, with hardcore stans seeing the differences between these groups compared to casual listeners. I'm not trying to take that away or bunch everyone into one group. However, I just don't think we can deny Minhyejin's influence over the vast majority of fans who actually believe this narrative, as well as the newjeans fans who are obsessed with accusing any group that follows their trend or releases any title track that cannot be classified as a ballad of straight up copying newjeans. It is generally getting out of hand seeing how a few similarities between groups is actually being depicted as some behind-the-scenes ploy to try and copy the girl group. Since the choreography argument is actually currently the loudest, I think I should address that first. When we discuss copying and plagiarism in dance or anything for that matter, we should be using the original definitions for the reason that they provide guidelines on how far these accusations can go. The reason why having a similar dance move cannot be seen as copying is because it brings a slippery slope in which anyone at any point can push this argument as far as they choose, and at that point, the word loses its meaning, which devalues actual situations of plagiarism. Without a guide of definition, anything can be seen as copying, which brings us to these choreographies. Fans found about 4 dances from 3 different illit songs that the girl group's choreographers have allegedly copied from newjeans choreographies, and furthermore, newjeans choreographers themselves have spoken up about this, siding with the baseless accusations, which is honestly rather nauseating, witnessing this behavior from grown humans, but I digress. I cannot believe I actually have to say this in the crisp year of 2024, but newjeans choreographers did not invent, neither do they own any of these dances. Plenty of choreographers in and outside of K-pop have actually used similar dance moves before, but they're not classified as copying. It should go without saying that there's a difference between having a singular dance move in common versus having a sequence or an entire routine that is similar. The latter is not found in any of illit's choreographies. This is a case of if you're looking for something, you will definitely find it. Because Minhyejin claimed that there was copying, people then went to look for it and they found a few similarities, then ran with them. And I'm pretty sure someone's gonna say, Cheryl, I'm not that shallow. I know that there's going to be similarities. I just find it funny how all those dance moves are similar to one group. First of all, you will find plenty of dance moves in both illit and newjeans routines in other groups. People don't see them simply because they're not looking. Secondly, if you're going to use that standard, then I suppose this would be a good time to talk about weeekly. When I watched a TikTok debunking these stupid allegations and showing similarities between different groups' choreographies, I couldn't help noting how newjeans had a couple of similar dance moves to weeekly. So I decided to challenge myself to see if I could find similarities in any of their choreographies. And in less than 20 minutes, I found about 7 similar dance moves between weekly's after school and holiday party and newjeans ditto and oh my god music videos. Based on their own choreographer's logic, I should be allowed to classify this as not a coincidence, but actual copying. Do you understand my point of using original definitions correctly and having guidelines? When we do not do that, that means that I am allowed to do this with any other two groups that I see fit, and it does not make any sense. Speaking of who did it first, the choreographer who complained about the dance move in Illit's Lucky Girl Syndrome choreography might want to have a conversation with Cheon, who had that similar dance move in Knock literally a month before newjeans' McDonald's song came out. Oh, and while they're at it, they might want to consult with Lisa, Luna, Aizwan, and G-Friends choreographers who use that exact same dance move first. I don't want to believe that everyone who works for newjeans is deprived of nutrients, but I guess this is better than the alternative, which would be that they know that these allegations are baseless, but they're trying to help Min Hee-jin on her little quest to bring hype down. If it's not the choreographies that people are complaining about, it is the formations. Yes, K-pop stans have become so jobless that we're gatekeeping formations now, including formations that have been done many times by so many groups before. Also, illit is no longer allowed to have flow choreography because that is considered copying now. Again, the consequences of not using words according to their definitions. Let's move on to the debut promotional photos. This is where Min Hee-jin claims that she started to see the similarities in illit and newjeans' concept, even if now we know that it's not true. But digging through these promotional photos, I was directed to illit's visual director, Serian. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce her name. It's important to stress that many people have worked on illit's debut, probably to 100. However, a lot of heat is falling on the visual director because she's the one who posted a middle finger on her stories during Min Hee-jin's press conference. And while I'd like to admit that I was less than professional, I can't blame her, as in her place I actually would have done more than that. The bitch would have to meet me around the back. Min Hee-jin was literally undermining her work to cover up her accusations and direct attention away from her plotting and possible criminal activity. I would be upset too. But looking more into Serian's work in the recent years before working with illit's debut, it became obvious where her inspiration for her work comes from. And I hate to crush the hopes of the delusional fans, but it did not come from newjeans. This isn't to say that there are no similarities that inspire her and Min Hee-jin. I'm not saying that. But accusing her of copying is a stretch longer than the distance around the sun and back. Serian is actually talented and has worked with several artists in the past before working with illit and ENHYPEN. And before that, she had worked for magazines such as Vogue Korea. And at that time, she worked with idols such as Wasa, Jennie, Wonyoung, Kim Min-ju, Somi, Irene, G-Dragon, and so much more. When you look at some of the photo shoots that she's actually visually directed for these artists, you can see some of that reflect into illit's work, especially when it comes to things like color palette and styling. This is prevalent in their Real Me promotional shoot. The colors, the sets, the themes, they all showcase work that she's done before newjeans' debut. It's part of her blueprint. It's like knowing when Daeun of Twice writes a song or Suga of BTS is writing a song. Their style is all over that music. And Serian is no different. She's like any other artist in the world. In an interview, which was recorded for the book Make Break remix, The Rise of K-Style, which was released in November of 2022, she stated that her inspirations actually come mainly from subculture. She expressed her love for mixing colors and patterns, and more importantly, high fashion with street fashion, which I personally haven't seen newjeans do. She actually added an example of pairing a princess dress and a baseball cap as an example, which she actually did for Iroha in their Super Real Me promo photo shoot. You can see the mixed match of colors and patterns along with high fashion and street fashion throughout their concept, even their styling for the magnetic promotion. I will say that the copying allegation that would actually make sense for the Real Me styling would be actually the comparison to the online shopping site PLZ project in the photos that they posted in November of 2022. These photos, everything about this looks similar, and I've actually seen some illit stans claim that nobody owns a turtleneck or a miniskirt, and I agree. But the combination of that, along with their hairstyles, the photo shoot, the set, being at a crossroads, I think is enough to raise suspicion. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened before, but I'm just saying that you cannot overlook the similarities between the two. The point that I'm trying to make is that these specific comparisons of plagiarism actually make way more sense than trying to attach anything from this photo shoot to newjeans. With that being said, I think it's time to address all the other minor copying accusations that I see floating around. I'm going to go through this as quickly as possible, so try to keep up. Let's start off with the diamond heart that was not invented by newjeans. In fact, I've actually seen this being done. It was done 5 years ago by Eun of Everglow when she was promoting herself on Produce 48. She turned their logo, which was a diamond at that time, into a heart. Either newjeans copied it from her or it's just a coincidence. But then again, when it comes to newjeans, it's just a coincidence, isn't it? Next, we have the 3D billboard ad, which is literally not new to K-pop. BTS actually did it for themselves before newjeans was even in Min Hee-jin's dreams. Let us not be stupid. And as for hanboks, I can't believe I actually have to say this. Guys, you cannot copy what is traditionally in your own nation. And if you're one of those who claim that it's actually the vibes of the photo shoot, peeking behind a wooden pole is not unique, okay? You know what else is not unique? Arranging the description of a YouTube channel. But if you want to go there with me, Belift had already done this for Unhyphen before newjeans debut. Literally get a job. Sleeping in a music video is also not exclusive to newjeans. Please do not make me embarrass you by bringing up all the groups who've done it before. This is all so dumb that these allegations have actually gotten this far. But I'm not surprised that they have, because this is exactly what Min Hee-jin wanted. She used illit because she knew that people would buy on it based on their prior behavior of accusing any other group of copying newjeans. As soon as they saw any droplets, they were gonna go off, and Min Hee-jin was counting on it. Christine F., the 1981 film, is based on a true story that follows the story of 14-year-old Christine, who falls into a life of drugs and prostitution after her father's passing. If you watch it, there are certain scenes that you might actually recognize in the movie. For instance, Christine and her friends going to a bar, or when she touches up her lipstick in the bathroom mirror, when she attends a David Bowie concert, then there's her resting in the bathtub taking a bubble bath, and then her sneaking in a room to grab a slice of cake and eating it. If you swear the scenes I'm describing are things you've actually seen before, even if you haven't watched the movie, that's because you have seen it in the Attention music video. That was the entire intro of that song. As if that was not enough, there were chunks of scenes from the music video that was similar to the Japanese girl group Speed's music video Body and Soul. The beat in itself of the song Attention is also not original. It sounds exactly like Living Backwards by Pace, released in March of 2021. Now, I'd like to stress that the beat in itself could be a case of a sold sample and probably not that big of a deal. But unfortunately, this is what happens when you cry originality in the face of millions, and a good chunk of your work is anything but. You're shooting yourself in the foot here. The whole gist of Min Hee-jin's claims against illit and Belift seem to be off the basis that originality ought to be protected. In other words, originality like her work. The issue is that nothing this woman has ever done for newjeans is ever original. And I'm pretty sure there are those who are going to claim the rebuttal that we should expect to find similarities between newjeans with groups from the 90s. And my response is, that is exactly the point. That is what makes it unoriginal. When you take something that has been done before and repackage it for a new audience. If she actually never complained about being copied, or she never pretended that originality of her craft was her main focus and more important to her than money, we would not be having this conversation right now. Min Hee-jin has a sense of grandiosity where she hails herself as being this genius woman, a woman of originality who values her craft. She kept talking about how some of the people who had reached out to her had told her how great her work is and how genius she is. But when you look deep into her work for newjeans in particular, everything is either inspired by the early 2000s or repackaged for this new audience or copied from some other artist. And there's nothing genius about that. Once the similarities in the scenes from that movie became a point of discussion, people could not help seeing it in other music videos, like Mustang, the 2015 Turkish film, which was talked about 2 years ago actually, but people shut it down really quickly, saying that it was not that big of a deal. Not only from the number of similar scenes, but the commonness of these scenes. Girls being in a car, huddling in a circle, playing by a body of water should not be a reason for controversy, and I actually agree with that, like anyone with common sense would. But when you consider that Islet was harassed for having a sleeping scene that lasted about 5 seconds at the end of the Magnetic music video, which is a very common scene that you see in so many K-pop songs, to allegedly copying the ASAP music video, you cannot get upset. You also shouldn't be shocked that people started seeing similarities between the ASAP music video and the 1970s movie Valerie and Her Week of Wonders. Now, if you know all three of these films that I've actually just mentioned, you might be aware that there's a recurring theme here. Dark coming-of-age movies that involve underage girls in situations of some sort of drug or sexual abuse. When we complained that Min Hee-jin's images of movies depicting pedophilia and controversial underage Brooke Shields commercial with Calvin jeans in her home, you claimed that we were the problem. When SM groups warned you about the inspiration behind FX's Pink Tape, the Lolita concept in Red Velvet's Ice Cream music video, the photo shoot of 18-year-old shirtless Taemin, and the photoshopping of Jonghyun's body to make it, and I quote, more youthful because he had looked too buff, you said that SM stans were jealous that aespa had competition. When we said that her obsession with praising Danielle's so-called innocence when they were apparently spending time together to bond, you said we were looking too deeply into things. When we called out the lyrics of newjeans Cookie, you said we were the ones sexualizing these kids. Now when you look at the movies, that have similarities of scenes in their music videos, there's a running theme that you only refuse to see because you do not want to. It's like the writing is on the wall right there for everybody to see. It's one thing to have an unconventional taste in movies, I get that. But to use them as inspiration for a group with kids in it, different story. What's interesting is despite all these similarities in these movies being pointed out, newjeans fans have flat out denied the similarities, saying they're actually not the same and it's not that big of a deal and people are looking too much into things. But the issue is that plagiarism accusations are supposed to be consistent. You cannot make noise because of 4 dance moves and 1 scene in a music video, then deny several similarities between newjeans' bodies of work and movies that have been made before them. Now, while I'm not big on the allegation that newjeans is copying the Mexican girl group jeans from the late 90s, mainly because, newjeans are going to have similarities to 90s groups anyway, these are actually the consequences of the woman who cried plagiarism. The similarities that people have found between newjeans and the group jeans, from styling to album releases to music videos to promotional content, is actually astounding. It was actually so much that one of the group's members actually ended up pointing it out. A lot of newjeans fans have tried to turn these accusations down, saying that we are just targeting the members of newjeans and we don't want to see the similarities with other 90s girl groups. But here's the thing though, what newjeans fans are witnessing is the same energy you give to illit over 4 dance moves. Do not dish what you cannot take and sure as hell have a hard time swallowing. You cannot start a war and then cry victim when people retaliate. These are called the consequences of your actions. Deal with them. The amount of gaslighting I've witnessed from people swearing that newjeans and illit have the exact same concept, as Taylor would say, you wouldn't last an hour in the asylum where they raised me. This isn't to say that there aren't any similarities between the groups that one can find. That's an unrealistic remark. But comments such as, I thought they were newjeans by just looking at them. I could have sworn this was newjeans. These 2 groups are literally the same. These 2 groups barely have a difference. These are a pathetic attempt to be sneaky with hate and y'all ain't slick. After this controversy, people saying comments such as these in their comment sections, we can see what you're doing. You're trying too hard to be haters, just stop. When it comes to those who feel like these groups are exactly the same because of aesthetic and concepts, I think we need to discuss that. There's still some arguments on what newjeans' actual concept is, but the widely accepted idea is that their concept is Y2K inspired. There are others who think that Attention and Ditto are actually the only Y2K inspired songs that they have, and that the rest of the retro elements that play into their music and music videos focus more on the nostalgia of the 70s all the way through the 90s, especially when it comes to fashion. Illit's focus visual-wise seems to lean towards 4 different aesthetics for their 2 divided worlds. According to Illit's concept, they live in the real me world, which symbolizes who they are when they are awake, and the super real me world, which symbolizes the world they go into when they sleep. The super real me world is represented by the songs Midnight Fiction and Magnetic, whereas the real me world is represented by Lucky Girl Syndrome and My World. In Magnetic, the title track, visual-wise, the music video seems to have a lot of elements of the dreamcore aesthetic. And before the experts come for me, number 1, I'm not an expert, but number 2, I'm aware that traditional dreamcore is way more colorful to be considered an aesthetic that illit has, considering that a lot of the colors in Magnetic are very muted or pastel. But there are actual visual elements in this aesthetic that are seen throughout their concept. For example, the liminal spaces, Magnetic was filmed in an abandoned empty building. You have strange creatures, you have wings, there's orbs, there's flowers, there's clouds, and more. When it comes to the color scheme and fashion, Magnetic takes inspiration from 2 other aesthetics known as dreamy and coquette. And to avoid confusion, dreamy and dreamcore are not the same. The main difference being the colors. Dreamcore has traditionally more vibrant colors, and dreamy focuses on more muted and soft pastels. Fashion-wise, you can see this in the ruffled tops, the tulle skirts, the flowy silk dresses and skirts, along with soft tees, sneakers, and glowy makeup, which their stylists use throughout their Magnetic promotions. When focusing on the storyline itself, they seem to take inspiration from yet another aesthetic known as the Magical Girls aesthetic, as each of the members possess a different superpower in this super real me world. Wani has photokinesis, Minju is clairvoyant, Iroha is telekinetic, Yuna has superhuman strength, and Mocha chronostasis. Elements for this aesthetic such as stars, hearts, ribbons, and soft colors can be seen throughout the music video. Again, elements you will not find as a part of newjeans' visual direction. And that's just one song. The album intro, My World, has a much different aesthetic from what we see in Magnetic, as it is represented by elements of what is known as the AQB aesthetic, which I've been repeatedly lectured is not the same as cyber grunge. I get it, experts, I do. A style believed to have originated in South Korea, it is best described as a combination of Y2K minimalism and subversive aesthetic, while another article called it old charm with a hint of nostalgia, containing elements such as stars, gray sidewalks, and grim streets in background, and then cargo pants, tops, mini skirts, t-shirts, and school uniforms in fashion, and then neutral colors in color scheme. In the Real Me promotions, teasers, performances, and even outfits, you see plenty of these elements that represent the AQB aesthetic. When it comes to Lucky Girl Syndrome, a B-side that also has a music video, the visual director seems to draw inspiration from a different aesthetic, focusing more on 90s teen fashion. Everything from the Lucky Number 7, the plaids, including the skirt that one he was wearing in the music video, the jeans, the overalls. You can also see this in the model of the cars that are used in the music video, along with some of the house decor elements. So clearly there's a lot of time and effort that went into thinking and putting together Ilit's concept. Only for Min Hee-jin to turn around and cry, they copied me, to cover up her scheming and plans to commit crime. What a brat. Undermining the efforts of those who put in a lot of time and effort to come up with the details of Ilit's concept and music just to cover up her ass is both sick and selfish. She's casted a dark cloud upon the girls' heads by busting these ridiculous accusations at the most crucial time of their career, their debut. To some K-pop stans, Illit will forever have a debut legacy of being called copycats of a group that has no originality just because some 40-year-old is allergic to accountability. Let that sink in the next time people try to minimize the damage Min Hee-jin did.